Summarizing a single article is straightforward math, but the computational challenge changes entirely when you ask an AI to ingest an ancient, highly fragmented archive. Take the Book of Psalms. On a purely mathematical level, this dataset consists of 150 individual, self-contained chapters. The data is heavily disjointed. It was generated over roughly 900 years by multiple disconnected authors, from King David to Moses to the sons of Korah. The final compilation of these texts didn't even occur until after the Jewish people returned from their exile in Babylon. Unlike historical or legal documents, there is no linear plot here. The entire corpus consists exclusively of poetry, prayers, and sacred songs. Because this dataset is so vast and emotionally erratic, any AI attempting to summarize it cannot simply read from start to finish. It first has to invent a framework to impose order on the chaos. To see exactly how machines solve this problem, we gave the exact same prompt to summarize this 150-chapter archive to two different models, Chat GPT and Gemini. What we are testing here is the AI's hermeneutic. Hermeneutics is the method or theory of interpretation. An AI doesn't passively read data. It applies an interpretive lens to decide which variables are worth weighting heavily and which should be ignored. This visual breakdown reveals two entirely distinct lenses. Gemini approaches the data as a literary structuralist, mapping the macro architecture of the text. ChatGPT behaves like a systematic theologian, mapping invisible, relational themes. This direct comparison illustrates how vastly different starting assumptions can drastically shift the final summary of the exact same historical dataset. This diagram represents Gemini's first analytical move. It takes the 150 disjointed chapters and physically segments them into 5 distinct volumes. The model identifies a precise pattern here. This 5-part structure intentionally mirrors the 5 books of the Torah, running from Genesis through Deuteronomy. Gemini uses this physical ancient artifact to anchor the text's organization in historical tradition. The logic Gemini extracts is highly symmetrical. Since the ancient Israelites believed God provided 5 books of instruction, their text was deliberately engineered to offer 5 corresponding books of human response. Gemini treats the text as a constructed architectural object, prioritizing metadata, layout, and historical consensus above all else. Once the physical structure is built, Gemini shifts to sentiment analysis. It categorizes the text into 2 primary emotional gears: lament, representing the dark valleys of grief, and praise, representing the mountaintop. This heat map illustrates Gemini's statistical observation. Over 1/3 of the entire collection is classified as lament, direct cries of fear, anger, and confusion heavily concentrated in the early chapters. But as the model reads forward through the timeline, it tracks a clear trajectory. The concentration of lament steadily drops, and the emotional darkness begins to clear as the chapters advance. By the time Gemini reaches the final 5 chapters, Psalms 146 through 150, it registers a statistical anomaly. The lament vanishes entirely. Every single closing chapter begins and ends with the exact same repetitive anchor: Hallelujah. Gemini identifies a mathematical sequence designed to move the reader from a state of despair toward hope. Now, look at ChatGPT's output. It completely ignores the 5-book architectural framework that Gemini relied on. This diagram shows ChatGPT organizing the data into functional categories. It groups the text by genre, sorting the chapters into thematic clusters like Thanksgiving, wisdom, and divine attributes, regardless of their chronological order. ChatGPT isolates trust in God as the central hub of this network, pulling in famous passages like Psalm 1 and Psalm 23 to prove its point. By treating the text this way, ChatGPT applies a highly devotional lens, mirroring the way these translated words are actually used by readers today. It extracts the specific relational dynamics between the Creator and humanity, identifying God as a shepherd, as a king, and as a deliverer. ChatGPT acts as a devotional synthesizer. It prioritizes what the text means for a reader's daily life, rather than how the physical scroll was constructed. ChatGPT does find one chronological vector, and it's a piece of data that Gemini omitted entirely: messianic prophecy. This chart highlights how ChatGPT extends these ancient Hebrew poems forward in time, linking them directly to the future life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Gemini treats the text strictly as a self-contained psychological and historical artifact. ChatGPT treats it as a single data point on a much larger, ongoing redemptive timeline. By weighting theological tradition heavily in its analysis, ChatGPT turns a static collection of ancient poetry into an active prophetic map. The clearest contrast between the two models appears when they analyze the exact same emotional data. Both AIs identify raw emotional honesty as the defining characteristic of the Psalms, yet they frame it in opposite directions. Using its anthropological lens, Gemini concludes the text is powerful because it represents humanity speaking directly to God to process doubt and pain. Using its theological lens, ChatGPT concludes the text is powerful because it proves God welcomes every honest emotion from humanity. This logic model shows the strict difference in directionality. Gemini sees an upward action initiated by humans. ChatGPT sees a downward allowance initiated by the divine. Identical strings of text yield entirely inverted relational models. It just depends on whether the AI is programmed to prioritize human psychology or divine interaction. Neither AI model produced an incorrect summary. They simply parsed the data using incomplete, singular lenses. To build a comprehensive, multidimensional model of the text, we have to merge the outputs. We start with Gemini's physical layout as the base layer. Then we map ChatGPT's theological connections directly onto that structural foundation, weaving the thematic nodes into the chronological sequence. Gemini provides the skeletal architecture. ChatGPT provides the theological nervous system. Together, this dual-layered approach accurately maps both the historical reality of the ancient scrolls and the lived experience of the modern reader. When querying artificial intelligence about massive historical texts, the truth of the summary is subjective. It depends entirely on whether your prompt asks the machine to act as an architect of literature or a theologian of words.